I believe in Hashem. Trust in Hashem. There
never is a moment that I am alone and I'm on my own. I believe and I trust in Hashem because I understand that He's holding my hand and every step is perfectly planned. He's holding me tight, so I'll be alright. I believe and I trust in Hashem.
Today is Erev Yud Shvat. It's a very, very special time coming. It marks 72 years since the Frierdiker Rebbe's Histalkus, and the Rebbe took over, became the Nasi. A year later, it became more official. That's when the Rebbe said the Maimer Basi Legani. But it's very important for us to remember that every year when such a special day comes, we should connect ourselves more to the Rebbe. That's why we go to the Oyel. That's why we learn more Chassidus, Basi Legani, we give more tzedakah. Somebody once asked the Rebbe, why does a chassid go to the Oyel? He wanted that the Rebbe should daven at the Oyel for him. He says, Rebbe, please mention my name by the Oyel. But he said, writes to the Rebbe also, even though I don't really understand how this works, and why should a chassid go to the Oyel? And B'chlal, are you allowed to daven to anyone else besides Hashem? Very good questions. So the Rebbe answered him, first of all, before you eat or drink and sleep, do you have to first figure out how it helps your body? How it works? You eat, you drink, you sleep, and you know your body gets healthy. You know it works. Same thing about the Oyel. Davening for you at the Oyel, it works. Why? So here comes your second question. Why we're davening to someone who passed away? So the Rebbe said, you're not davening to someone who passed away. First of all, the Rebbe says, a Nasi never passes away. Because even when people came to the Frierdiker Rebbe, when he was alive, Begashmias in this world, they didn't come to him because of his body. They came to him because he had a special neshama. And that never changes, even after Histalkus. Why is it called Histalkus when a tzaddik passes away? Histalkus means it goes up. It's nistalik, it goes up higher. He reaches a higher level. So that's what it is. We're davening at the Oyel of someone who's alive. But we're not davening to the Rebbe, Chas v'shalom. The Rebbe says, don't worry, we're davening still to only to Hashem. It's one of the 13 important principles of Yiddishkeit, that a Yid only davens to Hashem. So why do we daven at the Oyel? So the Rebbe says like this. We are asking the tzaddik who is buried at that place, can you please daven to Hashem for me, on my behalf? In other words, I'm also going to daven to Hashem. But because this tzaddik did so many mitzvahs, his tefillah, his davening, is accepted much quicker than mine. So I'm asking the Rebbe to daven for me to Hashem. So the only one we're davening to is only to Hashem. It's just we're asking the Rebbe to daven for us. But then the Rebbe says, here is another important point. What is a Rebbe? He's the head of Bnei Yisrael. And just like the head of a person's body, that's the first station where your neshama comes to. When a person is born and his neshama comes to him, the first place is in the head. And then from the head, it goes through the whole body, to every part of the body. But it starts off from the head. And then it goes to every part of the body. But there is a very important condition, that every part of the body should be connected to the head, so it gets the life. What does it mean connected? You have all the arteries, the veins, the nerves. They are all connected from all different parts of your body. They are connected to your head, to your brain. And from there, your chayas, your life, comes and reaches every part of your body. So it all starts from the head. The same thing is with our neshamas. Our neshama comes from a neshama klalis, from a general neshama. The general neshama is the Rebbe of the generation. And we get it from him, through him. That's how we get our chayas, like the Alter Rebbe says in Perek Beis of Tanya. So therefore, what our job is to make sure that we stay connected. Because if chas v'shalom, one artery or a vein or something is blocked and it's not clear, then there's no flow. Then it's just, that part of the body is not going to get its life that it needs. Which means, as a chassid, we connect to the Rebbe, then we get everything we need, begashmias and beruchnias. We get everything. But then people ask them, why go to the oil? Maybe I can go to 770 also. Is the Rebbe only at the oil? The truth is the Rebbe is in many places. The Rebbe is not limited to one place. The Rebbe is wherever a person wants the Rebbe to be for him, he's there. Doesn't have to be physically next to you, but he's there. Maybe you heard the story of Reb Mendel Futterfass, that he was in Russia, in jail, and he wanted to write a letter to the Rebbe, but he couldn't, because they wouldn't give him paper, they wouldn't give him the pen. There was no way he was able to send a letter to the Rebbe. So in his mind, he imagined that he's writing a letter to the Rebbe, and he connected to the Rebbe in his mind. Later, when he came out of Russia, he came to his family who was already in England from a while before. They said, we got a letter from the Rebbe answering certain questions. We got a letter for you. And he sees that this letter was an answer to the questions that he asked the Rebbe in his mind when he was sitting in jail. So we see that the Rebbe is not limited. In fact, I have a story about the Rebbe Rashab, where we could see a Rebbe can be even physically in two different places. There was once in Russia, in a town, a family that the husband, the father, had a very hard time getting a job, having a job. So he used to go traveling to different places and do work in other cities, other towns. and come back sometimes after a few weeks. One time he left and he didn't come back for a very, very, very long time. And she was so worried. She didn't know what to do. They want to have a father in the house. She wants to have a husband. So she went searching and looking, but could not find him anywhere in Russia. She was about to give up when suddenly a friend of the family, who was a Lubavitcher Chassid, said, "Why don't you travel to Rostov, to the Rebbe Rashab, and over there you'll speak to the Rebbe, and he'll surely help you." She made a very long trip and came to Rostov to see the tzaddik whom she never saw before. And she asked the gabbai to go in. She asked the gabbai, "Can I please go into the Rebbe to speak to him?" And the gabbai said, "I'm very sorry. The Rebbe is not accepting any women at this time." "But I must see him. It's an emergency." And she told him what's going on with her husband. Her husband disappeared. It's already a very long time. I don't want to stay a woman without a husband, an aguna. He says, "You know what you could do? Write a letter, and I'll bring it into the Rebbe. Whatever the Rebbe answers, I'll tell you." She insisted she wants to see the Rebbe. But when the Gabi said, "No way," she sat down. No other choice, she wrote the letter. And she gave it to the Gabbai. Gabbai took the letter, brought it to the Rebbe, and a short time later, the Gabbai called her to say, "I have an answer for you from the Rebbe." The Rebbe said, "You should travel to Poland and go to the city Varsha. Varsha is like over 1,000 miles away from Rostov. Besides, it costs a lot of money. It's a very long trip, and she didn't even have the money. She says, "How am I going to travel so far?" But I can't travel so far. Impossible. They said, "You want to have your husband? Listen to the Rebbe's advice." Okay. "Oh, but I don't have any money." The Chassidim got together some money and gave her to be able to buy a ticket. She got onto the train and traveled until she came to Varsha. When she came to Varsha, she stands there on the platform in the train station. "Now what? I don't know anyone in Varsha. The Rebbe didn't give me an address where to go." And she just stood there in a spot, not knowing what to do. Suddenly, a Yid walks over to her. The Yid, a tall man, dressed very, very nice, with a nice, beautiful red beard, and says to her, "Excuse me, do you need any help? You seem to be a little worried. Can I help you?" And she said, "Yes." And she tells him the whole story about her husband, and he's missing, and that the Lubavitcher Rebbe sent her to here, to Varsha. "I'm here now, I don't know where to go." He listened, and she was so impressed that this person was listening to her and paying attention for such a long time to her whole story. When she finished saying her story, this man said to her, "What is your husband's name?" And she said. he says, let me show you where to go. And he says, outside this train station, if you walk down the street there, and he showed her exactly where to go, there is a flour mill where they make flour. Go there and ask the guys in the office for your husband. She went to the flour mill, went into the office, and asked the guy by the desk, do you have a man in your factory, in your place, by this and this name? He said, yes. And they went to the back to call him. He came out, and sure enough, it was her husband. At first, she began speaking to him with anger. She was so upset. But then, after talking and speaking for a long time, and he explained to her why he had to choose to do this, to stay away for a long time, and he didn't come back. After explaining himself, she calmed down, and they spoke for a long time, and he apologized, and she said, then let's go home. We're all waiting for you. He says, I would like to go home. I really want to, but I'm afraid of going back to Russia. But by the way, how did you find me here? Who told you that I was here? And she says, there's a big tzaddik. The Lubavitcher Rebbe, he told me to come to Varsha. Really? And he got so excited that the tzaddik knew about him that he says, okay, I'm going with you. And they both got onto the train and they traveled back home to live many, many, many years together. And never again did he go away for a long time without permission. But when they got home, the woman said, I want to go back to the Lubavitcher Rebbe to thank him, because he helped me find my husband. What a miracle. So she came to Rostov, where the Rebbe Rashab was. But again, the Gabbai said, sorry, the Rebbe is not letting any women in. But what you could do, stand by his door, because the Rebbe usually leaves his office, and they said what time he leaves. Stand here, and you'll see the Rebbe. That's what the Chassidim told her. And you'll be able to say thank you. She came there at the right time. When the Rebbe opened the door to walk out, she took one look at the Rebbe's holy face, and she gave a shriek and began to cry and fell down and fainted. She couldn't even say the word thank you. When they woke her up, they asked her what happened. She says, why, that's the rabbi who I saw on the train station in Varsha. The one who was so kind to me and spent time with me and showed me where to go. He says, you're making a mistake. The Rebbe was not in Varsha for the last long while. I promise you, this is him. It's exactly him, not someone like him. It's mamish him. Yeah? Well, tell me exactly, when were you on the train station? What day was it? And what hour? And she told him which day it was, and it was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, around that time. The Gabbai suddenly got very serious. And he says, now I understand the mystery. Now I understand the mystery. And everyone's trying to listen, what kind of mystery? The Rebbe says, every day at 1 o'clock, it's my job to come and knock on the Rebbe's door and bring lunch. The Rebbe usually opens the door, I put down the lunch, and I walk out. But on that particular day, when she says that she saw him in Varsha, I came 1 o'clock, I knocked on the door, and the Rebbe didn't open it. That was very unusual. I waited a few minutes, and I knocked again. And the Rebbe did not open. So the family of the Rebbe got a little worried. Is the Rebbe okay? So one of the Chassidim went outside and went to the back of the house, climbed up to look through the window that goes into the Rebbe's room. He climbed up, he sees there's a curtain. So he said, let me try to peek through the curtain. He peeks through, and he sees right in front of him the Rebbe standing there. Face to face, he's a few inches away. And he says the Rebbe's face looked very serious and very deep in thought, and the Rebbe was like staring into the distance, into the very far distance, for a while. And then the Rebbe opened up the door, and I brought in the lunch. And this was so mysterious. What was the Rebbe doing then? But now you're saying that exactly that's the time when you saw the Rebbe in Varsha, and he helped you. So where was the Rebbe? In one place or two places? Right. The Rebbe is wherever he wants to be. Wherever we make the Rebbe feel comfortable. You make your house a Beis Chabad, a place of Torah, Tefillah, Tzedakah, Avos Yisrael, and you do the things the Rebbe tells us to do, then we have the Rebbe, we're connected to the Rebbe, we get all the brachas, especially when we take a hachlata connected with Yud Shvat. That gives us even more brachas, the most important bracha to bring Mashiach now. A guten Tag.